You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Well, hey, everybody, this is Doug Thorpe again, and you are on another episode of Leadership Powered by Common Sense. We're the show that tries to take common leadership challenges of the day and break them down into nice bite-sized chunks that can help you do more, oftentimes with less. That's a common challenge we hear from folks today. My guest is a special privilege for me. She and I share something. We were joking in the green room. If you are a John Maxwell trained coach, you are introduced to something called the Maxwell DNA. And it's a great way to style the spirit and content of what John does as an exceptional global leader in leadership thought and theory. But that's not all we're going to talk about. We're not here to sell John's programs. He does that well enough on his own. But it is my privilege to introduce my guest, Diana Fritz. Diana, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate the time. I look forward to the show.
Yes, tell us a little bit about your journey. You have a very unique story to tell and something that I think is powerful, and that's why I was certainly interested in getting to have you come talk to us. So tell us your backstory and your journey.
Yes, I'm happy to. I'll do the short version, right? So we're not here all day. No. So we were talking earlier about our Maxwell common connection, right? And I have been a fan of just always being somebody that grows and works on my own personal development and want to continue to grow, because if I can't grow and lead myself well, I can't lead others well. And that's been a part of my passion when I've had opportunities to be in leadership, is to always look for ways to grow and develop the team around me. And in 2014, I was entering that year. It was a big milestone year for me. I was turning 40, so that, dates how old I am right now. And I was a new single mom. Some things had transpired. So I was a single mom of two young boys. And their dad was off on the West Coast. I was an executive leader. We were positioning our company for sale later on that year. So that adds a whole nother stress. If you have not gone through that as an executive, it's one thing to be an executive. It's another thing to also be behind the scenes working to sell your company. And I ended up with that surprise call, Diana, you have a rare form of cancer. And that led to a whole journey I hadn't planned on. And so I have this unique look about me, but that's okay. I have learned multiple lessons around adversity and resilience and helping to lead myself well, as well as my family and those around me as I navigated through that journey. I went 9 years without, we were able to save the eye. And then in 2023, I got the tough call, Diana, we've been fighting for your eye. We have to shift to fight for your life. And anybody that gets a call like that, you're going to take a pause. But I was incredibly thankful that I had a great medical team around me, and that we made it 9 years and we saved two eyes, and that I was going to live past 50 with one. And through those journeys of timeframes of treatment and radiation and going through those segments, I continued to work whenever I could, because work and giving into people and helping lead and develop people was something that I needed, right? It's a part of who I am. And it was important to me to continue that journey with my team. And they needed me as much as I needed them. And that was important to me along my journey, never to lose those elements that are important to me as I would say, like to say a cancer thriver journey, not a survivor, a thriver, right? And it's just another thing that was added in terms of life lessons and how to lead myself through something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, for those that are taking this in via your streaming service, you can't see the visual, but Diana did in fact lose her left eye and now has I'm sorry, I don't want to be insensitive. Is it considered a patch or a repair or
No, that's a great question. It is a skin flap. It is a section of my leg that is used to fill in the area
fill
where
in the
I
area there? Yeah. Well, and back to the career journey. You were in technology, as I recall. Is that right?
I have had a season in my career that I was focused on technology around the Salesforce platform, as well as any other CRM that we were working to consolidate into Salesforce.
I bring that up because I think it's still safe to say that even in today's modern world, female leaders in technology are a little rare. I'm sure, just in the general sense of emerging leaders in any kind of role, we always end up having ourselves in some kind of discussion about the gender biases that might exist and things of that sort. But correct me if you feel otherwise. The tech world, I think, has an extra layer of that bias, and it, you know,
Yeah, no, it definitely can. I remember my first role as an executive, forget about the tech part. I was the only female on the team, and I was about 15 to 20 years younger than the rest of the group. So that was my entry into leadership and being a part of an executive team. And I just worked to um, earn the respect and trust of people around me and just ignore any bias and just be the person, right, that was consistent and then they could trust and learn from. In the technology space, I tripped into that somewhat by accident. I used to joke and say, I do not want to be in IT. I am not an IT person. I am a people person. um, However, that is helpful when you are a part of technology and consulting because the people part is often the portion that's forgotten.
mhm.
Um, and that was where I had the most passion. So it was easy for me to add value and show that I had, positive points and insight to make. And I think if you don't mind, I can share a little bit in terms of the area that was really pushed into action. So we all can remember the years of 2020 and 2021. Those were COVID
Hmm.
years. And the company I worked for at the time, Coastal Cloud, was working on technology solutions to help reduce the impact of COVID, right? A lot of companies at that time were faced with, do we go under or do we figure out a solution that helps to push us forward? And I had the opportunity to lead the team that worked on technology solutions to manage the COVID testing sites, which were huge in Florida, as I'm sure they were in Texas, thinking through our states and population. And so we led the solution there, bringing this is how we can make it flow smoother. This is how we can automate the testing results because it was impacting everything, schools, businesses. And then we also helped to do a similar solution for the vaccine when that came out and helping FEMA to manage those sites and make it smooth. And so yes, I was oftentimes one of the few females in the room. However, we had a solution that was really needed at the time. And I was also willing, I never expected to do this, but I was often on those sites helping to train people how to use the technology and to navigate through everything. And so you get met with, okay, do they know what they're talking about? But then when you see it in action and you're willing to be there and to serve and to show, um, those doubts can go away because you prove that you know what you're doing. You're there to help
Hmm.
solve a problem.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. If I can be so bold as to sum up what I think you said, it's kind of like in respect to the gender bias in the executive ranks. The best solution is you go be you. You do you. Don't try to emulate somebody. Don't try to copy somebody. Just take your best shot, do what you know and believe best. And, yes, if you want to find a coach or a mentor along the way, wonderful. And hopefully you did have access to that, and as many have done. But it is a matter of just trying to let it be, ignore it. no point in being a crusader per se and falling on your sword. Just prove them with your contribution to the greater good.
Yes, exactly.
Let me ask you this, Diana. So you've alluded to a couple of things already, the people side of leadership and being able to do that as opposed to technology and everything. When you first started climbing the ladder and doing your work as a manager and leader, do you think your ideas about leading people were already formulated in some form or fashion, or has it been a whole lot of trial and error? Or give us that angle on your journey. Where did you accumulate your understanding of your passion for that, and then develop the skills and abilities that you found successful?
It's interesting. If I look at my undergraduate degree, it was in exercise science, so you wouldn't have wouldn't have picked to be where I am today. However, I think team sports as a high school athlete, as well as in college, were very helpful in shaping me to understand what teamwork looked like, what leadership looked like, and also holding each other accountable, whether it's among the team as peers or also being accountable to a coach and the people or the team that you're representing. That was very important to me. And then as I shifted into some of my earliest leadership roles were actually like managing a restaurant. And there is not quite a training ground like it because your clients are right there in front of you. And so is your team, and things happen in the moment, things need dealt with in the moment. And the good part is when you go home at night, the day's over, the work doesn't continue. You come and you start fresh every day, but you learn a lot of in the fire of how you're going to navigate people, conversations, treat people well, respect them well. And we really worked hard to have a different type of restaurant and a different type of team. And then when I shifted into more of a traditional business, I wasn't given a manager title right away. I needed to earn my ground and gain respect. And at the same time, I was also reading a lot in terms of leadership books and what the difference was between being a manager and a leader. And I was also coaching, and that has helped me tremendously to not be the micromanager, right? But to work to coach and lead people and really be collaborative versus a dictator. And it just has always been sparked in me to always want to be a good leader and a good mentor for the people that are on my team, and to give them opportunities to grow and to learn on a monthly or weekly basis. And I have to admit, some of them didn't always like it. Oh dear, here we go again. We used to call them, I think, the customer success or customer delight meetings, right? We want to delight our customers, so we need to keep growing all the time. And some people loved walking in those doors every month, and others were like, okay, do I have to do this? But we eventually, I feel like, worked to get everybody going. This is an opportunity. Not every company is going to do this for us.
Mm-hmm. So many things packed in there that come to my mind. Number one, I think I agree totally. If anyone has never, particularly for any young people that might be taking this in, if you haven't had a time on the floor in some form of consumer-facing retail, restaurant, food service, hospitality kind of environment, there is much to be learned. And to your point, it is a very much a live fire exercise. You bring a team together early morning, and during shift change, you try to set the tone or set the pace for whatever it may be. And then as soon as the doors are open, your customer is right there. The feedback is instant. The feedback is not always kind. And it's not always easy to deal with. But you do, as a team leader or manager of an environment like that, you learn quickly how to think on your feet, how to find good resolution, try to minimize any downside that might emerge from it. But yeah, there is no no other place that I can think of that gives you that kind of people experience.
Yes. I miss it actually. I think I would open a restaurant. That could be someday, open a restaurant because that was
Interesting. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as you say that, I think I've got a good friend, a high school friend of mine, actually, who is in the restaurant business, and he's still well into his 70s, is still running uh, a brand that he created. He has successfully created, operated, and sold 6 or 8 brands, um, seldom participating in the chain idea. All of his facilities have always been unique, standalone themes and ideas, all the way from just the motif of the facility, all the way to the level of the menu and the quality. But it's always been high end, very good stuff. His is not a fast food restaurant by any means. It's a white linen sit down place. Um, and I love going there, and it's always fun to reconnect with him because we go back so many years. But yeah, he's been in it and still is to this day. So when you get it and you love it, it's wonderful. But clearly, still a lot of challenges along the way.
Right.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of your takeaways. If you had to summarize a couple of key thematic, learnings that you've accumulated over the years, help us understand 3 or 4 things that you claim as victories that you might now try to help others learn.
I was having dinner last night with somebody that has worked for me multiple times over the years. And so I have some things fresh in my mind because she looked at me last night and she's like, Diana, I think you're like one of the only people I've worked with, right, that would do that with me. And so our conversation will lead to the first point. But um, I have met her young in her career, and now she's 15, 20 years into her career. And it's like you are one of the few people that you would listen to me and then you would ask me questions to probe. You would just keep asking questions and help me to think about the other people's perspective and not allow me just to make quick rational judgments and then move on. You challenged me to think more and try to connect with the people that I was struggling with. Um, that is always something I work on personally because I always want to connect and try to really make sure we're talking on common ground. So I love to hear that from her because that means I'm doing
Work.
it and I'm living what I've asked for. The other piece that I've strived to show, regardless of my look and this cancer battle, is that our mindset and how we approach things matters so much. And I learned, just growing up, great things from my grandmother, my parents, team sports. But I went to college when I was graduated when I was 16, a year early, because I wanted to play basketball in college. Great reason to graduate early. I got injured and tore my ACL, which is a season-ending injury, shortly after we started practice. And I was reading Viktor Frankl's A Man's Search for Meaning, and that's been a powerful book and reminder for me throughout my lifetime, as he was somebody in a Nazi prison camp. He was beaten, he was tortured. And his phrase in the book, no matter what happens to me, nobody can steal my freedom to choose how I respond. And that was key for me then, but so key for me throughout different things in life. We all have tough things happen in life. Thankfully, not everybody looks like me with my one-eyed look, but we all have tough things that happen. And no matter what happens, I still get to choose how I'm going to respond. And I strive to choose positive and choose not to react crazy, but just be calm and think and then respond. And hopefully that is something that people that have worked with me learn and see the opportunity that presents when I take time to pause and choose how I'm going to respond and don't lose that don't lose that freedom that I have.
I love it. I love it. As you were describing that, I think so often people look at their circumstance and maybe something that has just occurred that they're going through, whether it's medical or otherwise, and they think, oh, woe is me. I'm undone. You know, there'll never be a tomorrow now that this has happened. Not even anywhere close on the same order of magnitude, but I talk about there was a season in my life. I had had a 15-year run as a leader and manager in the bank I worked for. And one day my boss walked in and said, "You're not going to lead this unit anymore." And I go, "What?" I mean, nothing but good things had been happening. The numbers were climbing in the right way, and things were clicking, and productivity was high, and there was just no visible reason. And yet, I was being taken offline, and it actually, as things can and sometimes do in that realm, it happened on a Friday of all days, and so I had the whole weekend to stew over it. And I vividly remember going out on my patio Friday night after dinner and just sitting at the edge of the pool I had. And, that sounds all lavish and, first world problem kind of thing. But I was devastated. I had never been demoted or fired or released from duty. I'd always had successive promotions and opportunities. And I was pretty well undone. And I sat there for a moment and meditated and thought about it. And then I can't tell you, it wasn't anything uber spiritual that came over me, but there was this voice that said, "Get over yourself. You're playing in the big leagues. These things happen. If you claim you're part of this upper echelon of order, it's going to happen. You just haven't had it happen to you yet." And it kind of was this pivotal mind shift of, you're right. That's right. And I went down the path of all the sports analogies of players that get traded from the team they love, and all that sort of thing. And I went in Monday morning, and everybody was kind of cautiously watching what I was going to do. And I had been offered, ironically, I'd been offered a position in the same unit I had just been stripped of, but there was a functional role that was basically, it was a sales role they suggested I consider. And I said, "I'm in. I'll do it," and I took all my stuff out of the office and moved down the hall to another place, a little less lavish and a little less, presumptuous. But, and I stayed there another 2.5 years, and people were like, they just couldn't believe I embraced that and accepted that. But it was like, yeah, these are the big leagues. I like playing third base, but you want me to play center field? Okay, whatever,
You probably learned some valuable lessons from that.
Well, I did, and I embraced the new leader that had been appointed to come in and take over. I helped. Back to our discussion, it was a female leader, and I'm probably the last person on the planet that's going to have an issue with a female leader because, as most of my listeners know, I grew up the only child of a single mom and watched her operate in the business world. So I have a great respect and passion for those that are fighting that fight. So this lady came in, and I said, "Hey, whatever you need, whenever you need it, just call me, let me know, I'll help," and we created a very healthy working relationship. Could I have been bitter? Yeah, I could have been. Could I have wanted to just quit the company and go somewhere else? Yeah, I could have done that too, but I chose not to. I liked the company. Just because I couldn't get the specific answer that I wanted, I made the choice to get out of my own way and move on. So, yeah, it was great, So it was a great experience. Let me ask you this, Diana. For the time we've got here, I can't avoid asking this question because I'm very curious. Again, I'm going to go back to our point of knowing and being a part of John Maxwell's amazing organization. I know you've shared the main stage with him a time or two. What has John said to you privately, if you don't mind sharing, about your journey with your cancer? Has he said anything?
I have not gotten to talk to him privately on it, but I will comment in regards to Mark Cole, which is Mark is the CEO. When I was working on my concept to write the book, I went to a book in a weekend, which was you don't write a book in a weekend. So I just want to make sure we're all clear there. Um, but there was a group of people, 25 authors gathered to work on their book concept that weekend and then start a challenge to write the book within the year. And Mark Cole was there as one of our book sharks. So we pitched our book presentation and he was one of the people there. And he actually has the foreword in my book is from Mark Cole. And he gave me great feedback in terms of Diana, you're up here presenting this today, and there's thousands of people every year that are diagnosed with cancer or know somebody that is. And you're standing up here with this positive mindset, and people need to hear your story. They need to hear it in the written word, but you need to follow up. You need to do workshops. You need to be out there talking to people because you can laugh and smile about your blind spot, and people need to see that. And so I appreciate his challenge to me greatly to finish the book and to share my story.
Well, Mark is a force in his own right. He's a wonderful man with a great servant heart, and probably doesn't get the notoriety that John does as keynote and mainliner. But yeah, Mark is a brilliant leadership thought expert as well, and wonderful speaker and great encourager. So that's very powerful. So let's talk about that. So what are you doing these days, Diana?
Um, well, it's interesting. I was thinking I'm a every 6 months I like recap my prior 6 months and or the prior year, and I was just looking and going, okay, a year ago I was still writing, right? And then in March of this year is when the book published and was launched. So I'm still working on elements to get opportunities to speak and share around my story and working on some workshops for women as well as different speaking engagements tied to the story. I do have a few other books that are in my back, in my brain going, okay, I'm going to write more books. Definitely next one is a child's version of the book that I wrote because children are very curious, which I love, but I particularly spark a lot of questions. And so a child's version of my book is there just because I want to encourage children to have that bravery and to ask those questions and how to do that well.
I love it. Yep.
And the rest of my time with leadership coaching and team building and communication.
What is the title of the book you released?
Uniquely imperfect, uniquely qualified.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, great. And I'm going to go back to Mark's comment about unique perspective on blind spots. Is there a section in the book about that? No pun intended.
Yeah, no, is there I think I do reference it yet because I think how I was talking about it in that session with presenting around the book concept. I do a lot of DISC communication workshops, and a lot of that is making people aware of their communication blind spots. We all tend to naturally communicate like we prefer to be communicated to, and we miss the fact that not everybody's just like us. And so I introduce and I kick off those workshops, and I will mention, okay, I have a literal blind spot, and use my look to introduce the concept that we're going to spend time today talking about our communication blind spots. And so that is referenced somewhat in the book because that was how I brought it up that day to Mark and the group was I just kind of laughed about how I use it, right? I try to use my look as a way to connect with the audience.
I'm reminded of another person I met a number of years ago with a similar challenge who just has embraced it with an amazing spirit and fun-loving heart and almost unbelievable veracity. His name was David Ring, and he spoke a lot in churches because most of his message was faith-based. But his issue was he was an adult that had been born with cerebral palsy. So he had a bit of a speech impediment. He had a little bit of a limp. He had a problem with one of his arms and hands that it wasn't paralyzed, but it wasn't classically functional like you would think of it. But he was an incredibly dynamic speaker. It might take you a moment or two listening to him to get used to his cadence and his dialect as he was speaking. He was from the South also, so there was a little bit of that going on at the same time. But I'll never forget, I've always carried this with me. His basic punchline in his keynote message was, "I've got cerebral palsy. What's your problem?" And man, that has stuck with me pretty much my whole life. And part of the message is, when you get in those moments where you get into the "oh, poor me," look what just happened, look what I'm dealing with, have your classic pity party. It's like, just take a second look around. There are many others that are in much different places than you might be right now. So is your deal really that bad?
Yes. No, there's many people that will look at me like, "Diana, I got up, I was having a bad day, I was really frustrated, and then I thought about you and I went, okay, it's not that bad." I'm like, "Well, I'm glad I could help you," and I wasn't even there.
Right, exactly. Well, Diana, I think we're about up on time for today. Tell people the best way to get a hold of you.
I can be connected with on LinkedIn, so I do well responding there. And then I also have a website, GRITUIUQ.com, and ways to connect with me there as well. Website and LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, as always, folks, we're going to have those links in the show notes. So pop over there, take a look, and reach out to Diana if you'd like to know more about her work and the books that she's written, and put it in your follow-up notes. Sounds like there's more to come. So, Diana, one last time, thank you so much for joining and sharing with us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Doug. I enjoyed our time.
Well, and also, this is the part of the show I like to remind you, we do have a video version of this over on YouTube, channel by the same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Go over there. Please like and subscribe if you will, or if you don't like it, give me a thumbs down. I'm okay. I can take the feedback. Would love to hear from you is the bottom line. Tell us what we can do more of or differently. Totally ready to entertain that and would love to hear from you. But I think for now, we're pretty well wrapped up. I think we're going to sign off, say goodbye, go out there and make it a great day.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.